Judeo-Christian tradition to like really suppress sexuality as not being part of human nature, because our jobs are to conquer that.
It's particularly put on women.
Right.
Yeah. 100%.
And you guys hold the jewels of purity, and you need to guard them from all these freaking hyenas that are men.
Yeah. And
we're coming to storm your fucking jewels, and you better not let us in.
Right. But to your point, Lynn, if we just acknowledge that that's just part of what it is to be human.
If you were to put it in that metaphor, right? We have jewels. Right? We have jewels. We have them in these cases. Like when you go to England and you go do the tour of like the royal jewels or whatever, right? Like everyone wants to see them. Yep. Like why is like, oh, that's like, it doesn't question anything. Nobody questions that, why everybody wants to go see the jewels. But it's like, yet you put that same metaphor to us and that we have the jewels, like, why do they need to be tucked away in the trunk underneath the ground 10 feet under?
Really where they are is in the strip club, and you can pay to see the jewels. Because that is where we have hidden them, and you can go see the jewels. You have to pay a lot of money and keep it back there.
You gotta make it rain.
Coming all the way from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C., we now bring you Enter the Freud.
What happened was I read this thing, and it was talking about sexualization and how women, I mean, right now, especially with like this movement of women empowerment and women really becoming their own, and, you know, especially now in this generation, modern, where women have a little bit more say, the oppression towards women is not as severe. But there was this thing online where this woman posted about sexualization and how being sexual is constantly being sexualized. And then it frustrated me in a way, because for me, my opinion is that you can never let go of sexualization because we're animals, and especially for men. I mean, for women, I think I can look at any woman, any man, and not really sexualize my interaction with that person until it goes into that level or that thinking. Whereas a man typically looks at something and it's kind of the first instinct, right? Yeah. But then it becomes a thing. It's like the first instinct, but then deeper you go, it either goes further if it's reciprocated or it doesn't. Right. And so it's just, I don't know. I have like slight frustrations with women towards them owning their sexuality and them kind of putting a lot of blame because of previous years, previous generations of us being oppressed and being, without a voice, without, being victimized, especially sexually. But like now, because times have changed and, especially with technology, right? Technology has helped us. Like there's not a lot of things that people can get away with anymore. Yeah.
And what was the perspective you were hearing or reading that was frustrating you?
So it was just about like, it said, this idea that women are unable to express their sexuality without being sexualized. Like, so it's like the sexualization happens and therefore it conditions women to either suppress their own sexuality, which is impossible because we're human beings, right? Yeah. But they feel that they have to oppress it, which then in turn, it's just like a vicious cycle for women in their minds.
This person's perspective was that when a woman is sexualized, that's a bad thing because she's being objectified. And so the piece was kind of criticizing how women just get turned into sexual objects so quickly and easily.
Right.
Was also a part of that they don't have agency then? Because that's part of the thing, the confusion that I have is like, so by whatever nature a guy sees you as sexual and it becomes a sexualized interaction, does that take your ability to control that situation or either own your part in it or shut it down?
Right. Obviously, for some women it does because they're incapable of assessing the situation or being able to really put up boundaries, right? Because for women, in my opinion, for women, it's very so tied, right? Like we as women, we go out and we're looking for these interactions with men to have an emotional connection, to have a, something beyond sex, right? Whereas these first interactions always seem to be kind of that. But then, I mean, my opinion also is that because we as women are looking for these more in-depth things, we give up sex because we think that that's the way to get to here. Where it's just like it creates this vicious cycle of misunderstandings between the men and women, because men obviously want it because that's within their nature. Whereas I think that women sometimes fail to understand that it's just within their nature, because I mean, like biologically,
it's just within men's nature,
right? To want to do that initially as an initial thing.
So, a question: do you think that then women, just so I'm clear, that women will shut down the sexual part because they're trying to move men in a different direction, or do you think that they're going to use the sex to get the men?
It seems like some women do
either one.
But my frustration is this belief for women out there that they have to not be themselves sexually because it gets attention one way or the other.
Yeah, okay.
You think there's a message from women to women like, hey, you can't like flaunt your sexual peacock feathers.
Oh, absolutely.
Because otherwise men will just objectify you, and then you're just perpetuating like a anti-feminist thing.
Yeah, I
that's
think
kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's
there's also part of that women tell each other, if you do that, they're not going to like you, and that you've already cut yourself off from a deeper relationship. That's like a general guy. If you give, it's like that old thing, if you give a guy the milk, he doesn't have to buy the cow kind of situation. So like, don't be too sexual. Don't give it to him, make him wait, because otherwise that's the end of anything else you thought was going to be in that relationship. So now you just have to choose the sex part and just be that what it may or whatever. But there's a judgment behind that, definitely, from other women.
Well, I think that's also the frustration, is that I believe that a lot of women have perpetuated this oppressing of ourselves because of that. There are going to be some women who are more sexually active, right? Have more sexual energy. So if you think about like energy in the sense, right? We all have vessels. Some people's vessels are this big. Their sexual vessel is this big, and that's the capacity that they can withstand. Other people's vessel is this big, right? So it's just a matter of how much they can do or do not do. But I think that women, because especially previously in society, right? Like sex was such a vulnerability, and it became such a thing where, almost like an advantage, right? Like these women that had more sexual energy had an advantage over other women, when it's not necessarily like that. It's not a competition between me and her. It's not a competition at all, right? It's just a compatibility. So my frustration is just this women that have this point of view that being themselves as a sexual being is automatically being sexualized by men, and that they don't like it. And it's just my opinion is just like, it's going to happen no matter what. I think the change is going to happen when we accept it as women. Like,
accept what? That men just will sexualize you.
Absolutely.
Right. And big deal.
Big deal. Exactly. Big deal. I think because so we were talking about there comes this point where there's a line, right? This boundary. And like, obviously women, as biology has it, is like, you guys are bigger, you're stronger, you're faster, right? You can overpower us, right? So when it comes in the sexual realm, rape is definitely an issue, right? Because rape is a very possibility for us. That's why we feel vulnerable. That's why we feel scared. But like, my opinion is like, that kind of violence or that kind of aggression really comes from the misunderstanding and not accepting this sexual frontness that men automatically have, that they don't, it's not so much that they can't control it, but it's an animalistic instinct.
The scene that is coming to mind is that a woman can't just like do her thing. It's like, it's not okay for a woman just to do whatever the hell a woman wants to do because of all these two social pressures. The one social pressure is the male sexualized gaze, and then the feminist judgment that women shouldn't sort of perpetuate that thing. So those two judgments is the scene, and now that makes just like the individual woman can't just like do whatever the fuck she wants, because she's got to like deal with the male gaze and deal with the feminist judgment, as opposed to just like, oh, it sort of seems like what the modern liberation America's a free country thing is, like a woman, she could do whatever the fuck she wants. You know,
this is making me think of like a college party when like a girl goes to a frat party and she wants to like blow a dude, whatever. But the thing is, you want to do it, you're having fun, but your thought process is like, okay, well, I'm going to do this with a guy. And it may or may not be that you're worried that that guy is going to go tell the other guys, but that might not even be the problem. The problem might actually be that that guy will tell people, and then your girlfriends will find out, and then you'll be the whore, the person. So now you're incentivized to be like, I didn't really, I was drunk. And you start qualifying your behavior as opposed to just being like, no, I really just wanted to go blow that dude at that party that night.
Right. Well, but that's exactly it, right? There's like far and few between women who are able and willing to do that, to say, fuck you to all the women that's like judging me, like whatever. I'm a sexual being and I'm going to be a sexual being. And the fact that I'm willing and accepting to have sexual activity happen, like whatever.
Totally.
And then the same on the other end. It's just, I think that there's a lot of judgment also, that a sexual gaze from a man is like a negative thing. Oh, yeah. Whereas it's like, so I was thinking about it when I was taking a shower, and it's like, what to do about it? Like why I was saying accepting it, like accepting that the man does that, right? Like from my experience, like I'm a very attractive woman. I know that, right? And so when I go out to the bar and I have these incidences with these men or whatever, I've never experienced a violent incident. For whatever reason that may be, whether it be that I've never encountered someone that's been like on that edge, or that I've never perpetuated something for them to go that way, right? But I think the latter more than the former would be that I just accept it. Like, okay, I accept that you're sexualizing me, but that's you, this is me, sort of thing. And so it's just, I don't know. I feel like when women get into trouble with that is when they have judgments towards the man for that initial thing that happens. It's like they look at them with disgust, they look at them with repulsion, they look at them, they have some sort of reaction, right? Instead of just accepting it for what it is. Yeah.
And let me kind of like try to put myself in the shoes of the women that are judgmental of that, to try to represent that thing. Okay, so their perspective, I think, is that when a man does that, if I go out and I see you out and I'm like, ooh, damn, she's hot, I want to get some of that. The idea is that I'm turning you into an object. I don't care about you. I'm just trying to use you for my purposes. And that's sort of like the man treating the woman as an object. And then the judgment could be, if somehow you perpetuate or feed into that, you're like perpetuating this patriarchal objectification of woman system. I think that's generally I don't know.
That's right. Okay. I actually heard it articulated that way.
In that way.
The women who support patriarchy and
right.
It as being kind of enemy of women who are trying to undo that.
Whereas this different perspective that you guys are kind of presenting is, if I'm a guy, I go to the bar, I see you, and I'm like, ooh, wow, she's hot, I want to hit that. And you basically are like, you pretty much just ignore me and you keep doing whatever the fuck you want to do, like, you have a right to do that. We're in America, a free country. A woman is equal to man, and you get to do whatever the hell you want. And if you enjoy my gaze, cool. If you want to ignore it, cool. If you want to tell me to go fuck myself, cool. Right, or if you want to blow me, cool. Like, it's all good.
Right. Well, but see, that's the thing. It's like, I feel like the misunderstanding is like this lack of compassion, from other women to just understand. I mean, sex is there no matter what, right? Like, we're on a base level. We're animals. We're gonna do it. When it gets into like higher levels, it's like we actually enjoy it on a conscious level, right? But I feel like there's just such a lack of compassion when it comes to understanding. So if a woman were to tell you to fuck off when giving her that gaze, that is actually going to perpetuate violence in the long run, right? Because eventually, if enough women tell you to fuck off, your tolerance of that is going to eventually end, right? You'll eventually snap, and then you'll eventually do something to another woman, right? So it's like, for me, I think that women sometimes lack compassion for men in that sexual realm, to just be like, okay, yeah, you think I'm hot? Sure. Okay. Thank you.
We haven't given men the roadmap for that, though, while cutting off one by saying, no, I should totally get to say fuck you. Like, don't fucking talk to me. Go jump off a bridge. We haven't given them a roadmap other than coming with a, like, signed document being like, excuse me, ma'am, I would like to have sex with you. Would you like to have sex with me? You know what I mean? Like,
could we get written consent here?
I mean, honestly, that's what's happening. But we haven't given men a path for that. Like, how do you actually... Because sex is part of our culture. It always will be. It's part of everyone's. That's how we get new people. But if we're going to be cutting off avenues, like, you can't hit on me, now you got to do something else. Well, what's the appropriate way to do that? Do you sit down next to me at lunch and very non-sexually say, hello, ma'am, may I get to know you? You know what I mean? Like, what's the rule?
Exactly.
But even that could get you a fuck off. I mean, these days, because if I talk to, like, my daughter, she'll be like, no, we should just, they're all toxic. You should say, fuck you.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say that then those women are not owning their own sexuality?
Oh, yeah. But it's because they don't know. They don't have the ability to understand that being a sexual woman is okay. And that, like, when we go out, let's use us, for example. Mm-hmm. We go out, guys hit on us all the time. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've told anyone to fuck off, but I haven't fucked any of them either, right? Like, we're just kind of friendly and nice, and we're like, oh, well,
Well, but that's where I also think that that's a muddled line, a gray line, right? Because, so there, especially now in the society, like, we as women, there has been this culture, like, norm that women go out and men pay for everything. Mm-hmm. Men buy us dinner, men buy us drinks, men pick us up, take us home. They do everything, right? That's a lot of money spent. Money is money, but at the end of the day, you're working hard, you're earning that money, and for you to spend it in such a way without the woman really giving some sort of, having some sort of give back to you, eventually is going to take its toll. Yep. So I feel like there is the gray line. I think my opinion is women in general, there needs to be, like, for us as a gender, we need to be better at understanding what it is can we curse? Yes. Yes. What it is the fuck we want. Yeah. Like, I think that's just the bottom line. Men know what they want. Yeah.
I think women know that they want both those things. They just...
What things?
I think women know I think women want sex, and I think they want attention.
I know women want sex, but women have the tendency to muddle sex with emotion.
Oh, well, yes.
Right. Like, it can be two different things, right? Sex can be just sex, and emotions can be just emotions.
You mean in any given interaction, though? If I meet somebody, I need to think about, like,
well, but we also take for granted. I feel like us as women also take for granted the emotion. Like, so we also have this culture norm that women are complex, men are simple, right? And that women are complex because we have this variety of emotions that we go through and that we have to sift through, and that men have to try to understand, where we in turn don't give that same thing to men. Men are also emotional creatures. And when they go to the bar and they invest their money, their time, their whatever into trying to woo another woman, and she's playing along, and then at the end of the day, she has no intention of doing anything, that's an emotional baggage that you're giving to the man.
Totally.
Part of me is like, well, that's part of the game. But but men have a part in perpetuating that too, because if you're on like YouTube or whatever, what do men say? We're simple. Like, they help perpetuate that perception.
Because men are in denial of their complexity because it's a vulnerable emotional thing that men want to deny.
Right. And if that was true, I think, at least from my perspective, if I was one, I could just assume that, which would, be great. But in lieu of that, but
you have to assume that because they're human beings. Like, regardless of them being male or female, they're human beings, and human beings come with emotion, come with intelligence, whatever level of intelligence that may be, come with physical ability, right? That's just like the bargain you come with as being a human being.
Right. So I can totally understand that, and I think that's true, but I think that a lot of people in order to simplify interactions, like, drop down out of that, and it becomes, especially when it comes to going out, it becomes a just calculus of, for speaking honestly, it would be like a lot of women go out just to fill up their self-esteem bucket. Like, they're not really in it to like go think, you know what I mean?
But is that not perpetuating the cycle for men? Because men go out with the intention of finding someone. I mean,
that's the goal, but you kind of know in the back of your head you're probably just gonna get frustrated and like go home kind of angry, or go to the strip club instead, because like that's where you have to go.
I think part of it, though, I think for me, the thing that I'm having a hard time with is the venue, right? Because it's different if you're thinking about whether or not you're going out to the club and like thinking, I'm going to meet a girl. This is going to be like an emotional thing. And I'm not saying it's not, because everyone is an emotional person and has, leaves the club with some sense of how that night went or how they feel about themselves relative to the interactions that took place. And so I definitely think you have to be cognizant of what you were saying earlier, of how people are going to feel leaving any interaction with you, or, because that's really all you can control is your own person. But the other part is to understand where you are, right? Is this the venue in which that's most likely to happen? Do I want it to be that place? And I don't know that a lot of people, including men, have done that, like think about that.
Yeah, but I mean, let's face it. I mean, as a woman, if a guy were to approach you at a coffee shop, right? Like, and you're in your own space. I mean, like the reason why we go out to the bar, the reason why we go out to the club is to fucking find somebody, is to fucking get with somebody that we find attractive, either physically or hopefully physically and intellectually, hopefully physically, intellectually, and emotionally, right? I mean, like, you don't go to the fucking coffee shop to fucking find somebody.
I don't know. I'm 40, and so I don't know. My thought, honestly, like, I don't go to the club. I mean, I don't go to the club anymore thinking that I'm going to find mystery, right? I just happen to have.
But what were you doing back when you were going to the club 5 days a week when you were 22?
But no, that's what I'm saying. Between the ages of 22 and 42, like, my rationales have changed a little bit. Like, when I was 22, I mostly just wanted attention and, like, I don't know, probably to, like, take a dude home. I don't think I was thinking about it that far.
And yet, out of the bars and the clubs, women get tons of attention and men don't. We give attention and then get rejection most of the time. Mm-hmm. It's kind of this one way. We're going to go out, give you tons of attention. You're going to soak it all up, buy you some drinks, and then ultimately you'll reject us, and then we'll like be like, let's go to the strip club.
Louis C.K. has a joke about that when he talks about like the most dangerous people are like men at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like in a group after the club when they've been like rejected. Like, stay away from them. They're very dangerous. Yes. You may get murdered.
Well, but that's ultimately my point, right? Like, I feel like if more women would get into these interactions with men, knowing what they want. I just want to fuck you. Or I want to get to know you. I would like to have a relationship with you. Whatever, right?
But
like,
you have to give men permission to say that, because right now, again, that would be like, and for women too.
No. Women need to say that.
Oh, we should say that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Why the fuck should they be? Why should they be the only ones that has to put that kind of boundary? And then we're like, oh, like that just perpetuates the idea that women are fucking fickle.
Women are fickle.
I mean,
I mean, some of them really are.
But part of the fickleness is that there's this like slut-shaming cultural vibe out there, and that if you just like do what Victoria's saying, which is like, hey, I want to fuck, like there's like a slut-shaming peanut gallery that like is looking over your shoulder and is going to tell you you're a horrible person for doing that. So women have to contend with that.
Yeah, I mean, right. And that's ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that break is going to come when women are like break the posse. Right? That kind of slut shaming really comes from these groups of women that all like kind of congregate together in order to save face, in order to be able to go, one of them goes out and they like, test the waters, test this, whatever, and then it doesn't work out until they come back to their little group and they're safe again. It's all about safety. I mean, like ultimately the whole sex thing is about safetyness, right? About being safe, about vulnerability and how much your vulnerability is safe. Men, I don't think women give enough credit to men that in those kind of situations, they are the ones being more vulnerable than us.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're the ones putting themselves out there. They're the ones, being like, okay, I know that she probably has an idea that I probably want to fuck her, which I definitely do. But, at the same time, like, she seems kind of interesting too, like now it's lost again.
I feel like I'd go to the bar and be like, okay, you're hot. Let's talk for 5 minutes and see what your relative, like, my interest in you is going to be. And then I should be like, you know what? That last 5 minutes wasn't so great. I'm going to have to walk away. It was nice meeting you, sir. Good luck. Or you've passed my bar. You don't seem like a complete fucking moron. Next level. Like, you know what I mean? Because that's really what you're doing anyways. You're just trying to like buy a little time to get to know if that person's a complete fucking moron. And, or if you, and which relates to whether or not you want to have sex with them, right? Because
who wants to have sex with a moron?
I have had sex with several morons. But that just depends on what I want to do that day.
But right. And you have every right to just be like, I just want to fuck.
Right. And then the guy's got to be like, usually they're like, sweet. You're like, lose my number tomorrow. Okay. Don't text.
But part of what needs to happen is our culture needs to like grant women the right to just want to fuck. Because right now in our culture, it's sort of like women shouldn't do that.
I think we're definitely stepping out of that. I think that it was definitely more prominent like 5 years ago. I don't think that it's as much. I don't know. Like it's interesting, the older you get, right? Then the levels of people you interact with change, obviously, right? And so then obviously people who get older and are actually dealing with life, like their values change, right? So like I feel like at 30, I don't feel like my 30-year-old girlfriends are really worried about that. Like, if anything, all of us are sluts and we all celebrate that we're sluts.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're like, fuck yeah.
But that seems like a really new thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, that's exactly still a pretty small percentage.
100%. 100%.
But didn't we talk about this, though? You and I did, when we were talking about feminism and the schism there, when we were talking about like the 1960s, 70s. Well, there was a while there where that whole sexual freedom was pretty well established.
They kind of like at some point in the 70s, there was talk like that. But I still think like going out on a Saturday night and I'm gonna go find some dude and fuck him. It seems like it's a small percentage of our culture that is like, yeah, that's totally cool. I think people are pretty uptight and judgmental about that.
Mm-hmm. I do think your circle thing is interesting though, because I think there are different circles, right? And marry the other circles shall meet, right? Like there's those kind of girls that live in the, I'm gonna, get a husband in a 2-car garage and we're gonna have a baby and we're gonna take our Saturday luncheon pictures. I know. That's what I think, right? Like, God, kill me. But then there's other circles, like my particular group of friends in college, we were not like that. I mean, they're married now, but we never went through that phase. We just went through okay, so the rules are when we go out, you're my girl and you mind your own business. So whatever I do, like, it's not you're not involved. And I may ask your opinion about like long-term stuff, but definitely not telling me who to go home with or not go home with. And you do whatever you want, lady. That was kind of our thing.
But your circle, what didn't you say, is relatively small compared to those other circles? Yeah. I mean, and those other circles are the majority. Those are the circles that are the ones that run this culture, this norm of like what should or should not be.
Totally. That's what I think. I think it's still a huge percentage that has a unwritten slut-shaming, pervasive vibe.
Well, yeah, I mean, you talk to anybody that's like, what's interesting is, I don't want to say this because it sounds bad. Like when I talk to like my daughter who's 19 and she's like super liberal, like they have this weird thing about whether or not it's okay to be sexual or do it because you want to, or if it's inherently because you're trying to get attention, and then that fills up your emotional cup, right? Like, and we got into a weird little argument about it because I was like, well, why can't you just be, who cares if maybe you like that? Maybe you like that. That's how you get your, your feel good or whatever, like that you like that attention. What's so wrong with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is for women. Yeah. I think that is like a double-edged sword. I think that works for men. I don't think it works for women because of the way that sex happens, right? Men penetrate women. So they're going into this thing. So they're never really like, for a woman, it's allowing, it's accepting, it's bringing in. So as much as it like in the moment or even moments after, it's fleeting because at the end of the day, you're being invaded. Your whole thing, your aura, your essence, your body, obviously, is being invaded. And so as much as a woman will try to say that being sexual is going to fulfill her emotional cup, it really isn't.
I would think that, but I'm just saying what I didn't like about it was the demonization of anybody who does it. Because, that's also assuming that people don't evolve, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I might be that person today, but tomorrow it should be perfectly acceptable for me to be like, oh, I'm not that person. That was yesterday, Mm-hmm. And now I don't feel that, but I'm not going to go around saying you're a horrible person because you shouldn't that's not where you should get that. I mean, I might not agree with it, but I'm not going to tell you that.
Right.
But a lot of people are telling women that.
Because I think life is about experiencing things and learning from how you receive things. If you don't like it, then do something different or figure out different ways to.
Yeah, but how many women actually do that, right? Like think about women in the sense of like, okay, a woman goes out and she goes to the bar and she gets flirted with and she finds someone that she's relatively attracted to. She goes home with them. They fuck. He leaves the next day. She's like, oh, I think I kind of like him. She waits for his call. He doesn't call. He doesn't call. He doesn't call. And then she goes out and she does the same thing again. Mm-hmm. And then it's just over and over and over.
But that's because her expectation is wrong though, right? Like, because if that girl had said, well, my expectation is I'm going to go fuck that guy because it's fun and I like it for the day. Where she went wrong is changing the expectation for the next day, like that he's going to come back because you didn't set that expectation in the beginning. Like, and so now you're going to go do it again. But if you got to learn the lesson, man, if you don't set that expectation that, oh, I actually do want to see you tomorrow, then you got to start with that from the beginning and not do it the other way around.
Right. Oh, isn't that what I said though? About going into it, telling, what do we want?
Well, yeah.
What do we want? Like, what do we want? I just think that women in general have a hard time with that. Like, what do we want? It's like it's the Notebook movie. Yeah. Like, what's his face? What do you want? What do you want? Well, I don't care what he wants. What do you want?
Yeah. And that should be a feminist thing. It's like that women should anchor in what they want, go out with what they want, say what they want, do it, and then they can get it. And if it's just sex, then it's just sex. And then don't try to switch the next day. But if it's connection, then start connecting with the dude right there at the bar and see if he's capable of emotional connection in the first 3 sentences. You can tell.
Right, and I think, but to your point, though, women aren't having the right conversation. They're talking with the wrong people about the wrong things. Because most women, and I think it's true that a lot of women don't think it's okay to just go fuck a dude. For lots of reasons, not the least of which is, of course, what the tribe is going to think about you. And so it gets, then you have a situation in which they're almost always trying to swing a relationship, but doing it the wrong way, right? It's like, because they're trying to swing, if I like throw out my casting line and grab a dick and I get him to fuck me, now he's somehow in my thing. And
that's a bad formula.
Yeah, but so many people use it.
Right.
Yeah.
And people basically just need to get educated that that's a bad formula.
Right, because that then just perpetuates this, like, it actually oppresses you guys in a way, right? Because it's like, oh, like, I'm gonna catch you.
Right.
When it's like, that's not how you fucking, no, it's not how you fucking do it. It's like, what? No, but I also think that there's also a movement right now with women wanting to not give up so much, because like sexual energy is a big thing right now, right? Like sexual energy of like giving, right? Like giving sexual energy and having that. So like, I think there are right now, especially, there's a movement in the sense of like, there are women who are not the old school, like, oh, you're such a slut for wanting to have sex. There's actually women who like, hey, like, don't give it up so easily because it's sacred.
Oh, yeah.
Which I actually do believe, like, yeah. I like 100%, like my belief is that we are portals to the divine, right? We can carry life. We have this, you know, portal or whatever you want to call it, right? That men don't have, bottom line, right? Like they don't have it. Therefore it's like being able, like opening that up and willing to accept a man into that place can be sacred. And therefore, you know, wanting to just fuck is fine. Like, because I mean, it is, we have these urges, we have these instincts, but at the end of the day, like women hold that kind of sacred power in the sense of like, hey, like I have this that you are wanting and it's within my power to say yes or no. But I think that the compassion and the understanding is how to say no, how to say yes.
Yeah, totally.
Like to say yes in such a way where it's like, I just want sex. I want connection. I want this to be something deeper than just a one night stand, right? Or the other way saying no, like, hey, like, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not into you. I don't think that it would be a good idea to cross those boundaries.
You should say, this is sacred and I'm trying to keep the energy such that your aura is not gonna like. I'm just kidding.
You should be like, you think you can come in this sacred portal, motherfucker? Hell no. You are not up to the fucking sacredness of this portal.
Try again.
It'd be really hard for a guy to be like, oh, okay. If you said something like that, there's no comeback. You just gotta be like,
we should try.
We should. They'd run the other way. It would save so much like time and energy. And then they would be like, oh no, my energy just wasn't matching her energy.
And if you're wanting to do the sacred thing, you should scare those fucking losers away.
Exactly. No, which again, it's like, it's such a sad, like, it's such a sad cycle that sometimes women fall into, right? In the sense of like, they forget that about themselves. Right. And then they go into these situations and then they're unsure of what it is that they really want. And therefore they give it up because they think they're going to be able to get something else. Where it's just like, it's just.
But I think the nexus of what you're saying, though, is just knowing what you want when you walk out the door. I mean, that's the end of that. You know, if you know what that is and that's your intention, then you have a much better sense of yourself. And we don't raise kids, boys or girls, to really do that.
Right. So how do you raise? Well, if we just start with girls, how do you raise girls to end up doing what you guys are talking about?
I don't know, because I have a kid, and I have to say, for all the conversations we've had, I'm losing to the internet, and everyone, I'm losing the YouTube and whatever it is. Because I mean, my daughter's like a super lefty, like in a way that it's almost like you can't really say much about, because it's not even inherently problematic. Let me just say that, because some of the things she says are actually really good about, you know, being secure in yourself and not being, you know, pulled along by guys or whatever. But the part that I don't quite understand is the demonization of men in that. It's like it can be both ways, right? It's not a, you know, either or. It doesn't have to be a dichotomy of like women good, men bad, you know? But that's kind of the space she's in. So it's like, well, how do you have that conversation when you've already relegated one half of the equation to being horrible? Mm-hmm. Right. You know, how do you own yourself but not see the other person as an enemy that you need to like be in an epic battle against to like figure out who's will good prevail, and then he'll come and he'll be a good person. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think for young girls, right? Because I teach tennis and I teach a lot of young kids. I mean, like my wheelhouse is 4 to 12. Like I'm really good with kids. And I would say with the young girls that I teach, when it comes to tennis, the assertiveness, like what I'm trying to teach them is an unapologetic just sense, and then compassion for when things don't go how they thought they would, right? Because I mean, the reality is we're human beings, we're gonna fuck up. Like, I mean, that's just it, right? So it's how do we come back from fucking up and then reasserting ourselves in such a way that actually matters. So I think for like young girls, I mean, you're asking like, how do we teach young girls to be that way?
Right. And I think the way we're talking about is talking about what women need to do is go out into the world anchored in what they want, whatever it is, whether it's just sex or whether it's a sacred connection, confident in that, and kind of go out to the world like asking for that and interfacing. This is what I want. Well,
and the compassion piece, right? Because I think, to your point, one of the things we don't do is see the other people as humans also, you know? And so
specifically the male sexual gaze.
Yeah. And I come from education, right? So I've worked K-12. We don't really talk about boys as we do talk about boys as just kind of being reactive and not having actually deeper emotions.
The boys really want to fuck you, and that's okay. You don't have to fuck them if you don't want, but you don't need to shame them.
No. We teach kids from the time they're little that boys are kind of bad and they need to be reined in. Yes. Like, because let's be real, education is full of moms. It's like the teacher is, even if she's not a mom, she's your mom in this environment. And so it's kind of like we get to create kind of what happens after that, right? So kids spend more time with us than they do with their parents. And we spend a lot of time acculturating little boys that they're problematic in so many ways.
I defend myself, at least as a teacher, in saying that I actually don't do that. Like when a boy fucking gets out of line, I fucking put him in line. I embarrass him to a certain extent in front of everybody, tell him that he's being a little shithead and that I don't appreciate it. And then I need him to fucking like own his shit. Like stop doing whatever the fuck you're doing and listen to me, because I'm the teacher and you need to do what I'm asking you to do. And I don't know.
But I think you need to spend some time in schools, because we really don't. Like as a general rule, and I've worked in many, many schools, and I've sat in and evaluated many, many schools. And by and far, it's a lot of it is about managing the boys. And the girls are we're like, yeah, Tommy's being obnoxious. Tommy, no one likes your outburst right now. Which may or may not be true, but we don't teach them that there's other outlets, and we take it from them. And then the way we treat, and this isn't true. Let me just say that there are qualifying factors that change how we treat certain kids for lots of different reasons. But, by and large, if you're a boy from kindergarten on, if you looked at my behavior problematics and what we need to do, that list is heavily skewed towards the boys. And a few other maybe just kids of color.
But isn't that interesting then? Because if you think about that relationship, right? In the sense that boys are this thing and girls are kind of just whatever, and that we're not really paying attention to. You then transition that into them adults. That's the same fucking thing we're dealing with.
But part of the reason I think that changed was because it wasn't a reaction to, we need to help girls succeed because they're not doing well, after the 60s, and trying to get girls ahead in math and science. And and girls right now are doing fan-freaking-tabulous. But the boys are not, because we went way too far on the other side. And so now the girls are doing great, but now we have what we've done with the boys, we've made them really insecure of their feelings, their behavior. They're not allowed to emote. They're not allowed to move. Girls are always like, Tommy touched me. And if I have to hear one more thing about how a preschooler assaulted sexually I'm like, is that a thing? Or is it like two kids just being kids? But we're putting like weird adult judgments on like children, and then kind of acculturating them to like boys bad, boys problematic, must protect girls, which in some senses, whatever. I don't claim to say that there's not a foundation for why that happens, but it's not to say it's a good thing, because now we have a situation in which we have half of the population of men in certain situations that have no idea how to fucking behave, because everything we've told them from the time they've entered into our system is that you're bad and we need to fix you. And now we've got girls that are acculturated to think all the boys are bad. They're toxic men. If they show any amount of aggression outside of maybe a sport, very specifically, you're a problem, and you're trying to hurt me. You're going to hurt me. If I let you do whatever it is you want to do, it's going to hurt me, like, inherently. And I don't know. I don't think that's a good thing. And we need to think about that more clearly.
I mean, don't even get me started. My mom's a teacher. My dad's a teacher. My brother's a principal. My other brother's a teacher. Like, my family's full of teachers. Like, the education system is fucked.
Yeah, like, if we could take out all your balls and your testosterone, that'd be great. I'm just kidding.
That is symbolically, metaphorically part of the vibe. Is it's like, let's get rid of testosterone because that shit's not good. But then I wonder back to what do we train our girls? If it wouldn't, because it's sort of like Victoria's saying, help the women own and be okay with their sexual desire. And if that was being taught, then maybe the male sexual desire wouldn't be so threatening anymore. It's kind of like, yeah, humans want to fuck. Men want to fuck. Women want to fuck. It's fine.
Well, we also have testosterone. We just don't have it at the same level. Obviously, at the same levels as you do. It's just like it's crazy. It's crazy to think that. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, we should be like. Yeah, we should teach like high school girls like, it's okay to want to have sex. Like,
totally.
Yeah,
well, and it's okay that they want to have sex.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
I mean,
humans want to have sex.
Humans want to have sex.
Fucking great.
You know, it's actually really great. It's actually quite pleasurable. Totally. It's quite fun, in fact, if you do it right.
That teaching definitely never happens right there. No one ever says that.
Which is absurd. Considering, like, it's the one thing that occupies our mind, occupies our days, occupies our lives. I mean, like, as a young kid, when you're starting puberty, right? Like, that's all of a sudden, that's all you're thinking about. And especially boys, right? Like, I can only imagine the boys that like started looking at pornography, looking at, masturbating, right? Like, all these things. Like, it's just, if sex was just okay, like, but
if you're a girl and if anybody gets wind of, if people knew what I was doing in the basement in junior high, like, they would have sent me right back to somewhere. Like, something's wrong with you, child. Like, you were thinking about sex way too much. What are you doing?
Right, but that's the cultural, that's slut-shaming.
That's slut-shaming.
It's like, women shouldn't have an active sexual appetite. No, that's bad.
Oh, no, I get that. But I was only saying that in reference to, like, I'm sure it's much more intense for boys, but I think we really underestimate how intense it is for girls, because we sit there just tortured.
Well, and women, the stereotype is that girls/women get into this like obsessive thinking more in the romantic realm. I think the romance is strong, and not that that's not sexual, but the romance is like the primary thing, and the stereotype is that women like get deep into the romantic passion.
Yeah, but that's because it's the vehicle for the sex part. You know what I mean? Like, if I thought about it, for me, of course I want that, because that's what I've been taught is how do you get into the sexual realm.
No, but this thing starts second grade girls when there's no sexual
Fantasy.
impulse.
Oh, you mean like princesses and
friends,
Oh.
like being
Having
swept
a
off your
crush.
feet.
And oh, he's so
Oh,
cute, and
yes.
thinking about him and writing notes to him and
love
drawing
notes.
pictures
Oh,
of
my
him.
God.
Yeah, that's totally true.
But that's the emotion, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where
Totally.
girls like have not been taught to like separate the two things, in the sense like we as young girls have completely like, okay, we, in order to have like this positive sexual experience, we need the man to be in love with us. We need the man to be like, we are their queen, their goddess, their whatever, right? Like,
I still like that.
which is an emotional attachment to it.
Totally.
Like, it just-
And actually, I think men totally love that too.
Right.
But then the other piece that I think is important is like, but you could have all of that on Wednesday night, and that's beautiful. And just because like Thursday morning, either or both of you decide, that doesn't mean Wednesday night wasn't fucking awesome.
Right. But I think another barrier that happens is communication, right? The ability to communicate between the sexes. The ability to communicate, the woman having the ability to communicate expectations, desires, and the man being able to communicate his expectations and his desires without either of them really taking it personally, right? I mean, like, cause think about it. If you like have an amazing Wednesday night and then you wake up the next morning, but neither one of you are really into it, like how does that communication happen without their hurt feelings?
I don't know how you, because I don't even have a way out of that one, because there's so much tied to it, and because there is, and I don't know that there isn't even inherent in this situation, because if the goal is always biologically to be desired enough to procreate or whatever, if that person decides, maybe not you, I don't know how that's not gonna, I mean, it's just going to have to learn how to deal with it, right? Because I don't think that you can ever really get out of it without feeling a little twinge of,
well, but that right there is essentially what we need to be teaching children. The ability to handle rejection.
Yeah.
Like a child, like you need to teach a child how to respond instead of react to not getting what they think it is that they want. Mm-hmm. Right? Because the moment, like you're saying, like once that happens, it's like everyone has a twinge. No, you don't have to.
I mean, I wouldn't have a twinge if I just decided I just wanted to have sex with you. Like if I had already decided at some point that there was something else, then I'd be like, if the whole plan was just for me to like, fuck you, then I'd be like, let me get you out the door quick. And I'm not going to feel anything about that. I'm just going to let it go.
Right.
But
that's the ideal. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like that's the question. It's like always getting in that moment. Like, can we really not?
I think if we did the thing that we talked about up front, which is to be clear about what you're doing, right? If you're clear that we're just fucking and you will be leaving and I probably won't remember your name and or have your phone number or put it in my phone, like, you just gotta like live with that. I mean, you took the deal up front. But the problem I think just becomes when expectations change. And I think for women in particular, if a guy is, starts off with the deal is, okay, now we're gonna go out a couple dates and we're gonna like, have sex with each other and we'll see where it goes. And then, yeah, you have the potential for the woman to be like, well, that sucks. Now I feel rejected. But also the men might if she makes the same decision. Mm-hmm. So who knows? And I'm not saying, because you can never really mitigate for hurt feelings at some point. Mm-hmm. But you can try to like lower the possibility of it by being super clear up front. Mm-hmm. And that being okay. Right. And then everybody's like, okay, this was the deal. Don't change the deal on me tomorrow. Like the deal was the same. Because I think that's what happens. People get into it, and women are super notorious for this. Yeah. Like, they'll agree to one set of circumstances and then quickly try to change it on you. Like, and you're the asshole because you were like, wait, I thought we had an agreement. What the fuck? I mean, how many girls do you know that do this?
I'm guilty. I'm guilty.
I mean, we've all done it. You're like, because then you're like, well, I thought I wouldn't like him. Now I kind of like him. But
man, that was a better fuck than I thought it was going to be.
Wasn't drunk enough. Damn it. I should have made that work. Then you just got to eat it at that point. I think you just got to suck that one up. And then, you know, either you walk away because you cut your losses, or you make a determination that you're just going to like see what happens. But you can't push it now, and you can't just go, well, so the deal is I changed my mind on this and now we're going to do this thing, because that's not fair. I mean, I think you got to eat the original decision. But
yeah, it'd be nice if the person would do that, as opposed to spinning a whole different story involving the guy being a fucking superficial asshole.
Right.
I wonder what do you think I'm going to go back to the original kind of going out and having compassion for guys thing. Like, at what point do you think women in that interaction think the guys are like being toxic or fucked up kind of humans? Like,
I think a guy becomes toxic or fucked up when he's not accepting what it is that the boundary that I'm giving him.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like, if he comes up to me, he thinks I'm hot or whatever, I'm like, okay, thank you. That's awesome. But I give off the vibe like, it's not going to happen.
Right. At
like,
that point, he needs to read that signal and respect it.
Right. And move on.
And what percentage of guys do you think will do that?
I've actually had a pretty high percentage. I mean, like, I would say 75% of guys that I've interacted with.
Read the signal and respect it.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Rhiannon?
I think it's pretty high.
Pretty high.
Yeah.
Somewhere 75-ish percent.
Yeah.
And then my guess is part of the reason you guys have high percent, I bet, is because you're pretty good at giving clear signals.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, again, goes back to this point that we keep
Right.
coming to, is the woman has confidence enough to assert her needs or desires.
Right.
I think sometimes I'm a little too friendly because I don't really want to hurt their feelings, so I tend to like drag. And then it's, instead of no once, I got to say it like 4 times. That's always a little bit annoying, but I realize that part of that's my problem, and they're like catching my like lack of desire to be like brutal.
And is also part of that you like the attention and you don't want to end that.
No, I definitely want to end the attention, but I'm not.
You just don't want to hurt feelings.
Yeah, I don't want to be a jerk, so I'll be like, oh, thanks, yeah, I'm just doing this, and they'll be like, keep talking, and I'm like, okay, so now I'm gonna be like, I have a boyfriend, or like, I'm just not interested, but I skew towards a little too nice because I don't like being rude to people, which is sometimes and it's not because I'm being rude, I just think it is, and so I have a hard time coming up with like the right.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I would say definitely now in my life, I'm better at being more assertive in my vibe and saying like, no, just no. And it's very like, I don't have to say it. It's just there. They kind of understand it. But I think in my younger years, I definitely had a harder time being assertive. I was too nice or too willing or, too people pleasing, right? Like in the sense like, oh, okay, like, I guess sort of thing. But I also think part of that I think part of it is us knowing what we want, but I also think a part of it is us owning our own sexuality. I've always owned my own sexuality. I've known that I'm a sexual person, and I'm not ashamed of being a sexual person. I'm not ashamed of having sex. I'm not ashamed of having one-night stands. I'm not ashamed of flirting or doing whatever. I would assume that Rhiannon is probably the same way, which is, I think, why we probably have a higher level, because I think that innately that comes out as compassion towards men, in the sense is like, hey, I'm a sexual being, you're a sexual being, we're having this interaction, but it is what it is, sort of thing. Yeah. I think that the women that don't know what they want and then also repress their own sexuality are the ones that get into the most kinds of trouble. Yeah. Because it's like men sense that, right?
Yeah,
they
totally.
they sense this lack of sternness in a woman of like what she wants sexually. Therefore, they're gonna, depending what kind of man he is, right? Not all men are gonna be some sexual predator, so to speak. Yeah. But, you know,
most of them are not, I would argue.
Right. But a lot of them, especially in those kinds of scenarios, are opportunists.
Mm-hmm. Right, totally. Because
they're giving up their time, they're giving up their money, they're giving up their energy, they're giving up their attention.
And they've been rejected and frustrated a bazillion times.
Their toll has boom, 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 boom added up. And so if they sense a woman who's vulnerable, who's more susceptible to being swayed by nice words and this and that, they're gonna
as hard as they fucking can.
They're gonna vulture in. For sure. And especially a woman who's not going to own her own sexuality. Why? Because a woman not owning her own sexuality, some man coming in with his sexuality, with his attraction towards her, is going to feel so like, oh my God, I'm so pretty. I'm
energy.
Nice. Oh, I'm like number one in the world right now. I can't believe it. Like I'm tingling. He's making me tingle. And then they open.
Need to know the rest of the story. That's what happened.
and then she gets drunk, and they go home. And then the next morning, she's like, "Oh my God, what did I do? I can't believe I slept with him. Why did I sleep with him? He's like,
I'm such a slut. I'm a slut. Well, maybe if he marries me, then I won't be a slut.
Maybe I can correct this wrong by like going out with him. Maybe he's a good guy."
Or they just do something else, but I don't want to go down that road.
Wow.
You know. Because then it'll go negative. They'll be like, he did this, he coerced me, I had a drink. You know, then I
can't believe he took advantage of me. He totally got me drunk, and he like made me. Yeah, for sure. I mean, those women I could slap upside the fucking head.
I know, but even me bringing it up, I'm like, ooh, dodgy topic.
But to have compassion for them, again, I think it comes from a culture and being brought up in a culture that has kind of a slut-shaming or a it's not okay to be a sexual being message to women.
Right, for sure.
The underlying premise that we're talking about, just state what it is once, just so I'm sure I'm on the same. What is it has something to do with compassion for male sexual advances? Is that?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's more, I think it's... yeah, I would say that. I would say it's having compassion towards men in the sense that their initial advance or their initial reaction towards a woman is going to be in a sexual nature.
And you're saying that that's the case, and if that was accepted versus thought of as simply a result of what's going on in culture, that it could be related to in a way that would be more healthy, more productive.
Yeah.
Well, I think if women own their part in it too, because I don't think that the conversation, like culturally, doesn't it's a one-sided conversation for the most part. It's like relationships are fucked up and sex is fucked up, but it's men's fault, you know, because they're problematic, they're predators. We have no part in this. We're like, great. You know? And I think what your kind of original point was, well, let's take stock of this situation and what part of this do we actually...
And so what's the suggested behavior change that you'd say for women?
Well, I think the compassion part, you know, understanding that men have feelings too, and that there are certain things that we do that affect men's experience of sex and the relationships that we're in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think compassion towards the initial reaction, right? Like, or the initial sexualization of us. I think it's just accepting it, having compassion for it instead of finding it repulsive, instead of finding it some sort of negative thing, because then it becomes like, reaction for every reaction. It's like, if you do this, which is on somewhat level, very involuntary, very subconscious, very, very natural, so to speak, right? Like, you're doing this. If I reject it right away, then it's going to cause a reaction in you, whether that be positive or negative, depending on your state of mind, where you are, what type of person you are, all those variables, right? But if I just accept it for what it is, I think and then have compassion. Like, I think part of it is like, it's a way of being seen. Like you were talking about earlier, like you guys go to the bar, right? And we're there to soak up all your attention, right? We're there to like have you guys talk to us and like, and do all these things or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, are we also doing that to you? Are we seeing you? Are we, doing the same thing to you? You are giving us all this attention, but are we giving attention back? And whether the attention be like, okay, I see you, you're seeing me you're seeing me sexually, that's okay, but whatever it is, it is.
So I want to be clear, so I know that, so I'm clear on something. Like the idea of humans being inherently sexual and situations being sexualized, because especially in a bar, right? Is to say, I recognize that that you're looking at me potentially as a sexual object. I don't know, however you want to say that. And then for me to be okay with that and just say, oh yeah, I know that's a thing, and not get offended by, well, how dare you see me as like hot and want to have sex with me,
Even though that's what we're out there to do.
Yeah, because we wouldn't expect that same thing out of a man. Like if that situation was completely reversed and I was like, I see you as a sexual person and I'm looking at you in that way, no man's gonna go, ugh, oh my God, like how dare you? Like bring it on. But women don't, right? That was kind of what you were saying about like not being so, because it is, we're humans. Because I do think there's this tendency, and maybe it's in our like Judeo-Christian tradition, to like really suppress sexuality as not being part of human nature, because our jobs are to conquer that, and to be better and to rise above. And so that becomes a non-part of the calculus of human interactions at that point, because we've evolved past that.
Well, it's particularly put on women.
Right. Yeah.
100%.
And you guys should be like the pure, and you guys hold the jewels of purity, and you need to guard them from all these freaking hyenas that are men.
Yeah. And
we're coming to storm your fucking jewels, and you better not let us in.
Right. But to your point, Lynn, if we just acknowledge that that's just part of what it is to be human, and it doesn't mean you have sex with everyone you see either, or that you're always going to allow like, a certain kind of advance, but at least to understand that that is always part of the freaking calculus.
Well, I mean, if you were to put it in that metaphor, right? We have jewels, right? We have jewels. We have them in these cases. Like when you go to England and you go do the tour of like the royal jewels or whatever, right? Like everyone wants to see them. Yep. Like why is like, oh, that's like, it doesn't question anything. Nobody questions that, why everybody wants to go see the jewels. But it's like, yet you put that same metaphor to us, and that we have the jewels. Like, why do they need to be tucked away in the trunk underneath the ground 10 feet under?
Really, where they are is in the strip club, and you can pay to see the jewels. Because that is where we have hidden them, and you can go see the jewels. You have to pay a lot of money and keep it back there.
No, you gotta make it rain.
Because that's what I was thinking of the whole time. I'm like, wait, we do this. We have a place where you can see the jewels. It's a strip club.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's where it's okay. I mean, to some extent. I mean, in those walls.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
The strip club is a little sanctuary where the rules are totally different than the rest of the uptight, repressed world we live in. And you go in there and it's like, oh, it's all good. It's like humans have sexuality. Big deal. Let's have fun with it. We don't need to hide from it.
Yeah, everyone knows you're looking at each other. Everyone knows that there's
which is also interesting, because we've talked some about it, where it's like, yes, right? Like, so you go in there and sex is just sex, and you like, men are free to be men and be like, yeah, like ass, titties, whatever sort of thing, right? But at the end of the day, like most of those men really go in there. That's like the initial thing that they go in there for. And then what is it that they really want? At the end of the day, what they're really longing for is connection. What they're really longing for is some sort of intimacy, whether it actually be physical or not, right? Yeah. I mean, so it's just like, it's interesting. It's interesting that ultimately you get past that, like animalistic, like desire, and then all of a sudden it's like you men drop into what it is that we constantly are looking for.
Yeah.
You're not giving. You're also though like giving the ladies who are like, let me just like pull them in with sex. You're giving them like we're back to that though, you know, at some point, because that's what women are trying to do, right? And if at the end of the day,
but
men
that's
are
for
doing
money, man. That's a fucking job.
No, but what I'm saying is,
that's a fucking job.
my point is on the men though, right? Because they're still going in to find the jewels, but when the jewels become like less hard to get, or you know, it's kind of there, then they do this other thing, which is maybe a more relational or emotional desire, which is just an interesting.
Right.
It's like
observation.
Flirting and play and intimacy, and it's just like it's like when humans feel so good when they're doing that flirting, play, erotic, cuddling thing.
Wouldn't it be that you guys feel seen?
Totally. It's almost like, oh, the men can go to the strip club to get the thing that the women can just go to the club
at the bar.
to get.
Exactly. Yeah. That's my point. It's like you guys, like women fail to see men sometimes. Yeah. A lot of the time.
And to do the flirt thing, like, damn, you look hot. Like, women don't do that to men. But if you go to the strip club, the strippers will do it to you right away.
Damn, Poppy, you look like you got money.
That's funny.
I mean, kind of true, though.
That's pretty. In that situation, that's like a lot of it.
Right.
They're not looking for the guy with the Ford Focus. That's like, he's going to give me $10. It's going to be so great. We rolling in it.